So my heart goes out to people who had to experience the recent tragedy that occurred in Pakistan, where a social group, people of social group, were brutally murdered by somebody unknown, and my news feeds, social media news feeds, are filled by the news and different reports on the thing, on this tragedy, and I was seeing uh, faces of the family members, the one who are protesting, and the ones who are responsible for taking care and handling the situation at hand. And being a teacher of spirituality, being a teacher of truth, being a teacher of connection in society, and being a practitioner of trauma recovery, um, I thought that I should share this reflection with you, uh, because in my country and as a whole, I want to give this message that spirituality cannot afford to be in the caves, like people work in the caves, in particular part in the history back then, where they could meditate, and they could be distant from the entire society. Any other stream of uh, thinking and practice that deals with human behavior, that deals with human suffering, that deals with human development and well-being, they cannot separate themselves from the reality that we live in. And that's why I'm here to share my view, that what I see uh, going on within this tragedy from a spiritual standpoint, from the lens of trauma in particular. So, so I want to invite you to think about the one who kills someone, or because that guy or that girl or that man or woman must have hatred within them in order to kill someone. And where this hatred comes from, what is the source of that hatred? And in my study and working with people, I found that the source is the separation. And being a dweller of this society and conditioned by this society, I feel that separation is the most important epidemic in this society. And in order to kill someone, you have to be separated to that far extent, because through separation you are able to defend yourself, and and you can offend someone else. So I find that this trauma response by a society, whereby there's a sudden activation of anger by some groups protesting against those who have killed a particular social group, and there's a reaction by the the group themselves whose family members were being killed, and 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 that particular consciousness is of helplessness, is of despair. And I can see, as I tap into this collective right now, it's kind of a dystopian society that I feel that we are in. And so as I was channeling the collective consciousness, because being a practitioner, we are not meant only to help individual, but through individual we tend to shape societies and to heal societies and integrate society. So as a trauma response, I see that the very fact of someone killing someone is a trauma response, and the way um, the one the ones who have been killed, the families are responding in a similar way because they belong to a marginalized community. And one can understand that if a group is marginalized in a particular society, what kind of consciousness they would carry. So this is one part. The second part is that how people are reacting to this situation. And I find that there is a rescue mentality over there. Rescue, I don't mean in a bad way, but I'm trying to assess, and I'm trying to understand what's happening in the society. And that mentality is kind of asking justice for people. and in a very good way. But as I see that, this kind of a response, which is a rescuing response, is kind also a trauma response, if you see. And and when people are angry, and when I see people getting angry on these things, underneath I see fear. I see that enmeshment that happens with the sufferers. And since my society in particular is a society where suffering is inherent in our socialization, is inherent, separation is inherent in our socialization. This is my truth, and my truth means the way I see it. And as I see it as a trauma response, because a person is triggered and kills someone is a trauma response, and the one who's being killed and not being supported feels helpless and being marginalized is a trauma response, which makes that particular community vulnerable to harm, abuse, or whatever you may want to call it. And naturally, there will be groups in society who would tend to rescue them. So I see that this whole event has activated a response which is embedded in the society from a collective standpoint is a traumatic response. And the major source of that response is separation. So I want to give this radical invitation to people, those who are dealing with the situation or being affected by it, like me. My question is, how are we to integrate that perpetrator within us, that killer within us, that victim we see within us, and the rescuer we see within us? Because a society cannot operate on separation and ask for peace and justice. That's my particular view, and anyone can disagree with me. But peace or harmony in society can happen when you feel connected to the other. Because once you are connected to the other, you cannot harm anyone. And harmony is a byproduct of connection. And harmony is not byproduct of any laws in being place or any policies or guidelines being in place. There are many rules, laws, guidelines, and people violate it happily, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes consciously. That means that having these guidelines, policies, laws are not enough. And in my view, as a teacher of connection, in my view, harmony and peace is a byproduct of feeling being connected with the other. But if our society's trauma is separation, is abandonment, then no one would feel connected, and it is easier for someone to kill someone and become a victim as a result. And if we see that activity going on, there must be rescuer in the society. So that's what psychologists call the drama triangle. And so this is how I see that this tragedy is a trauma response. And to heal that trauma response in the collective, at the collective level, is to integrate that consciousness of that marginalized group and consciousness of that perpetrator or group of perpetrators within us, and consciousness of that rescuer within us. That how am I to integrate all these parts of consciousness within us? So when I say that you need to integrate each aspect of consciousness, I mean to say you get to know the perpetrator. You get to know the mentality of the perpetrator. Because somebody who is feeding on hatred is a secondary emotion. Underneath hatred, there is hurt. There is hurt that we weren't taken care of. As I'm channeling into this collective, that we weren't taken care of, the society or the ones who are being responsible. And as a retaliation, I must hurt back. That's the consciousness of the perpetrator. So once you understand each aspect of consciousness and you start integrating this consciousness on an individual level, then you will be able to connect with the other, whatever the consciousness is. And I want to give this radical proposal. It's not a suggestion, but I feel that, we need to connect. It's so we are so separated on the basis of identities, on the basis of gender. Social differentiation prevails on a huge scale in our society and globally. But I'll talk about my society, Pakistani society, where we have so stringent identities and we don't want to build bridges around those identities. So my message is that how can we connect with the perpetrator within? How can we connect? How can I connect with the victim within me and with the rescuer within me? Once I create harmony within these consciousness, within these aspects of consciousness, I find that society will become a harmonious whole. And once you have these fragments in society, you cannot feel that harmony. You cannot feel the peace, because I find that peace and harmony are byproduct of connection, and not vice versa. So even if you want to have justice, because justice has an empathetic quality, and in order to be empathic, you have to understand the other. And so I'm not saying that abolish all the identities. That's not my message. My message is understanding. And while you can remain different, but also understand the other, so that the makeup of the other and your own self as well. So you're connected in a way. So on one hand, you need to create differentiation. That's important. It's important to separate black from white so that you can operate on a social level. But when it comes to harmony and peace, you need to understand. And that's what I'm proposing. I hope this message is kind of a radical one, what I'm saying, in my perspective at least. What I'm doing right now as part of my process is that I'm seeing where I am a perpetrator in my whole life, where I behave similar like the person who has killed that person from a marginalized group. And in addition, where I feel marginalized in my own life, where I feel vulnerable, like that same social group who has to encounter this grave tragedy. And similarly, I can ask myself where I rescue people, where I become enmeshed with the victim consciousness. So once every individual in the society begins to track back this consciousness and heal that consciousness within, I think that's the route to society. It's a long journey. I'm not saying it's a short-term solution, but that's the way you heal the collective wounds of the society. If the collective wound of a society is based on separation, on abandonment, then hurt will prevail in the society. And even those who rescue people will carry that hurt and will spread that hurt. And as individuals, we have learned that, if you begin from a space of hurt, you manifest hurt, you spread hurt, you aggravate hurt further. So in order to create peace and in order to create harmony, you have to be in that space of connection and being connected with the other. So that's my message, and I would love to have your views in my feed.